The Florida Panthers return for the holiday break and have mostly a healthy lineup, and it results in a big win over the Montreal Canadiens. On today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, we're going to be discussing the 7-2 win for the Florida Panthers over the Habs.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Friday, December 30th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, and you can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. Don't forget to also follow the other shows on the Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone, and Steel Roden. And for all your World Junior coverage for the Florida Panthers and any other prospect that you might want to listen up on, make sure to listen to Heidi Kalakash at Locked On NHL Prospects. So like I said at the top, the Florida Panthers needed this holiday break after a very, very poor performance last Friday against New York Islanders. A opportunity to have a 4-point swing go in your favor, and a few days off, few practices actually, as well for the Panthers on Tuesday and Wednesday. Some non-contact jerseys, and then Paul Maurice being very clear about what he wants to do with these non-contact jerseys, about Aaron Ekblad delivering hits, but not people putting hits on him to kind of preserve everything. And Barkov being back after everything that happened with Nico Hischier on that face-off on December 17th. Even Aleksander Barkov himself came out and said that he doesn't believe Nico Hischier is a dirty player. I said on the record as well on this program that I don't think he is neither. And wow, what a start for the Florida Panthers of just 2:37 into the game off a face-off. Aleksander Barkov goes right to the blue paint, and this has been a theme for the Florida Panthers really all game for them. Whenever you don't see a shot, even though this one was right off a face-off, they get it right to the point and getting traffic right up in front. And even though Aleksander Barkov wasn't looking, it's deflected off his foot and into the net for the first goal. Just 2:37 in. Later they get on the power play, and the broadcast mentioned about how they were making this power play very simple, cycling it around, and just not throwing it on the net for the sake of throwing it on the net. About seeing something that an open net or drawing the goalie to the other side so that he doesn't move quickly laterally to his left or his right, and Barkov from that left circle scoring on the power play for his 67th power play goal in his career, and passing Scott Melanby for the most power play goals in franchise history. And Barkov talking after the game about how he's honored to be wearing a Florida Panthers sweater, and how very fortunate to be drafted here, and then breaking records along the way. And then that third goal, multiple chances up front, and looked like seeing the replay again that there was a slight change of possession, which Colin White and Aaron Ekblad did not get a assist on those because of the change of possession, and Barkov able to clean it up right in the blue paint and then go backhand to beat former Panther Sam Montembeault there. But this game for the Panthers, it could have been a blowout really, really early. It ended up being one, but it could have. But just the Panthers just being a little bit not having much discipline as far as positioning, with Radko Gudas having interference, which the Montreal Canadiens scored on as the power play expired, NHL.com had it as a power play goal counted as Arbor Jack Guy, aka Wi-Fi, shoots from the point, a lot of traffic in front of Segei Bobrovsky, gets it through to make it 2-1 at the time, and then the Florida Panthers, when it was 3-1 after Barkov's Hattie, which fastest hat trick in Florida Panthers history, and Josh Anderson there to clean up after a lot of traffic up in front, and the fastest hat trick for the Florida Panthers in franchise history, and Barkov's second against the Habs. The last one was February 17th, 2019. That same game where Aleksander Barkov had put that incredible move between the legs on Carey Price as he was going on a breakaway. But again, the Panthers had an opportunity to really break this open, but just really the penalties with getting to the box, and only went once to the box the rest of the way. Once in the second period, and then the rest of the way, they didn't even put the Montreal Canadiens on the power play. And what helped was going 14 minutes and 54 seconds between the second and third period without allowing a shot by the Montreal Canadiens. And really, what helped the Florida Panthers was winning their board battles and not allowing the Montreal Canadiens to really get in between the hashes and in the slot as well. And just looking at the heat map on Natural Stat Trick, I mean, sorry, as my alarm goes off as I'm recording this at 7 a.m., got up a little earlier to record this versus recording it last night. So usual alarm goes off. Apologies about that. But only one goal was not scored in the slot or near the blue paint for the Panthers. The only one was that Barkov power play goal, and Matthew Tkachuk getting 2 goals on the night, 4 points as well. Two of them on the power play. The power play for the Panthers going 3 of 6 on the night after going 2 for 25 in their last 9 games. And even in the start of the second period, the Panthers were struggling to get it out of their zone. Even so, it an opportunity to put it away, but and kind of making those mid-game adjustments, and the mid-game adjustments really made that difference in between that second and third period. Like, once again, the 14 minutes and 54 seconds of not allowing a shot on goal, very well protecting Segei Bobrovsky. Segei Bobrovsky got the start, but I was surprised that he got the start. David Dork even pointed out as well that with Montreal being the quote-unquote easier opponent, that you would think that they would put Segei Bobrovsky against the Carolina Hurricanes, but the Spencer Knight did start the last game against the Carolina Hurricanes, which we'll get to later in the show. But yeah, Brandon Montour as well, 3 points on the night. And like I said, the Florida Panthers were doing such a great job of getting the puck back to the point, creating some traffic in front, and taking the eyes away from Sam Montembeault. And that's really what helped with getting up in front, and the Habs, they allowed the Panthers to just get past them for their rebound opportunities as well. And Brandon Montour, once again, 30 points in 34 games for a defenseman, a second pairing defenseman. I know he's had an increased role this year with Aaron Ekblad's injury at times this season, but almost a point per game. And we've argued at times that maybe it should be Forsling Montour as the top pairing, but there's a little bit of pride that comes into putting that lineup, those defensive pairings in versus Ekblad and Stahl, which doesn't sound good on paper when you actually think about it. And we've seen a little bit of Ekblad Stahl this season for the Panthers, and Radko Gudas as well. Let's also recognize about Radko Gudas being back in the lineup, delivering hits. Had one on Joel Armia near the boards and lost his bucket too. And then towards the end of the game, allowing Joel Edmondson to get the game misconduct as they got into a scuffle. And then one of the linemen, unfortunately, going down, it looked like he was grabbing his knee there as well. And then Brandon Montour, going back to Brandon Montour on Brendan Gallagher, and really getting a handful of fists on the face there as well. And despite all that, the Panthers, they struggled early, with going to the box, I mean, when it was 17 shots on goal, 8 of them were on the power play as well. So you knew what the key of the games were to close this one out and to not allow the Montreal Canadiens to get really any pressure on Segei Bobrovsky. And listen, not allowing the Panthers to get in front of the net, and that's something that the Habs were unable to do. I mean, one of the penalties, Nick Suzuki basically saved the goal as Aaron Ekblad was coming down in between the hashes as well. And Colin White, let's also talk about how great Colin White was in this game. Despite not having a point, the box score does not indicate how great of a game he had. Both of the unassisted goals that he had very much impacted this game. I mean, the first one, the first one where Barkov on the second goal, where Ekblad gets it to the net, Colin White's hacking. Like I said, quick change of possession, and Barkov scores. And then the second one, the stick lift for allowing Carter Verhaeghe to get a rush with Barkov going with them, and then Verhaeghe, leading goal scorer on the Panthers, gets it past Monty to extend the Panthers' lead. And Eetu Luostarinen tying his career high in goals with 9. The Panthers chipped it up the zone. Habs were caught cheating a little bit, and then him and Sam Bennett lead to a rush. So everything went well for the Panthers on Thursday night. So, and they were not going to the box so as the last 2 periods, protected their goalie, and really lived in the slot in this one. And that's basically how you got your 7-2 win. And it's an encouraging one, at least to start. But in segment number 2, we're going to be discussing some New Year's resolutions for the Panthers, me as a fan, and some of your responses, at least the ones that I got quickly before recording the show. And we're going to be discussing what this win could mean for the Panthers going forward. But first, we have a little bit of a message to you from the NHTSA. And it can happen so easily. You're out with friends or coworkers. You're putting back a few drinks. A few becomes too many. It's time to go, and for a moment, you think of calling for a ride. Nah, you're a good driver. You live nearby. You can make it home okay. What are the odds that you get pulled over? Even so, what's the worst that could happen? You lose your license, your job, total your car, you kill someone. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Play it safe and plan ahead to get a ride. Drive sober or get pulled over. Second segment here on this Friday, December 30th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, as the Florida Panthers get this 7-2 win over the Montreal Canadiens at FLA Live Arena. And as you notice, no Fairbanks Friday today, as Nick Fairbanks is feeling a little bit under the weather. So feel better, Nick. And next week we will be previewing a Friday night game between the Florida Panthers and the Detroit Red Wings. And of course, there's a Red Wings fan in the Fairbanks household, so that is always a fun game for Nick personally, for him obviously. But yeah, going back to this one. I mean, here's something from Natural Stat Trick actually on 5-on-5. Aleksander Barkov, Colin White, Carter Verhaeghe, 10 minutes and 6 seconds of total time on ice together, and had the biggest shot on goal differential between them and their opponents who they faced on the ice. Nine shots on goal to 3 while on 5-on-5, and the goal differential as well, 3-0. So that line didn't give up a single goal as the Montreal Canadiens got both on the power play. The keys to the game that we talk about with Jacob going perfect on the penalty kill didn't happen, but luckily the Panthers were able to outscore the problems, which was something like a last year thing. And I tweeted out from the Locked On Panthers account saying, is we want 10 appropriate, or is that so last year? Because we haven't seen this much this year. So we saw a little bit of signs for the Panthers. And listen, Matthew Tkachuk on Tuesday talked about how this is every single game from now on is a playoff game. And Friday's game isn't a 4-point swing by any stretch of the imagination, but you got a whole bunch of 4-point swings for the Cats. I mean, we're we're about to approach the new year. So let's discuss and listen. Let's go back a little bit to November, end of November, when Paul Maurice was asked about being concerned about the schedule. And he even said it himself that he is more concerned about this January schedule because of all the back-to-backs and the road games that they're going to playing mostly Western Conference teams in the beginning of the season, and now playing mostly Eastern Conference teams this time around. I mean, there'll be like a little mini West Coast trip in between for the Panthers in the second week of January. But I mean, you think there's some 4-point swings in there too. Like New Year's Day, you're gonna be playing against New York Rangers, who dropped against the Tampa Bay Lightning in overtime. And when Igor Shesterkin's not posting a .930 save percentage, you could see kind of the flaws on the team. And also, Jargelot might be on the hot seat for the New York Rangers. He did healthy scratch number 1 overall pick Alexis Lafreniere. You got Arizona Coyotes, who you unfortunately lost to in the very beginning of the season, only their second game at Mullet Arena, and the Panthers just couldn't put anything on Kirill Vejmelka. And then Buffalo, man, you're tied in points for Buffalo, and they have 3 games in hand on you. Toronto's in there, even though it's not necessarily a 4-point swing in that one, because I don't see the Florida Panthers getting in that top 3. Montreal again on the road. New York again. Pittsburgh, who might be in the Metro standings by the end of the season, or who might be a wild card. But even then, you got to treat that as a 4-point game. And three sets of back-to-back, and one of them is against Boston, the final matchup of the season against Boston, wrapping up in January. And this is the make or break month for the Panthers. Season's not over. I'm not there yet as far as that. And listen, last year the Panthers got healthy around when the holiday break ended. Of course, different circumstances based on COVID. There were some injuries, non-COVID related, and then some people sick that were COVID related. I mean, when I actually think about players being sick around this time of year with the cold and everything, it's crazy how it all matches together, and players being out and then making contact with people as well, and then trying to see families and playing a hockey game as well during the holidays, and trying to be there for their family. It's just, and a lot of stress too. And now that they got they got it out of the way, holidays are over. Of course, with the guys being hockey players and making millions of dollars, they're mostly the ones spending the money as well to try to make things happen. So it's also trying to get over that part of it too. It's not just the health conditions of non-COVID illnesses and regular injuries as well. But now that they got that out of the way, time to take off a little bit for the Panthers as far and hopefully this offensive explosion for the Panthers on Thursday. Yes, it's against the Montreal Canadiens. Yes, it's not sunshine and rainbows after everything, but it's very encouraging when you go 3 of 6 on the power play after going 2 for 25 in your last 9. You've proven at points this season that you can beat the lower tier teams that you're capable of beating. Vancouver 5-1, Seattle 5-1. But also the Panthers at times have shown that they can look down on their competition as well. Philly, Chicago, Arizona, Columbus. And it's go time. It really is go time. And let's talk a little bit about New Year's resolutions for the Panthers. And I got a few replies. It was really late at night when I tweeted this out, so I didn't know how many people were still awake as far as the fan base. And I got a few replies based on what our New Year's resolutions are as far as the Panthers. And Lil Cheesecake 4 says, fan base needs to stop overreacting to bad performances in game without a healthy Barkov. Clearly the best player on the team and the heart of the franchise. Keep Barky healthy, and we'll be back in playoff contention in no time. Close quote. And listen, that whole underrated thing for Aleksander Barkov that has been spoken about league wide, it's something that I'm not entertaining anymore because he's won a Selke Trophy. He's a top 5 center in this league, top 6 maybe. When you think about McDavid, Draisaitl, McKinnon, Crosby, Barkov is up there in the upper echelon of centers. And I spoke about with Kirby Lupo of the FLA Cats Hockey Podcast over DM just during the holiday break, and even in our episode during the summer about how Barkov starts, and how he explodes towards the second half of the season. As frustrating as it is, we've seen this so many times, and at this point, it's just about the expectations of how Barkov comes out of the gate, and just what he's capable of when he's just on his game and just feeling okay emotionally as well, mentally. And of course, the non-COVID illness from early December as well, which was reported to be him having pneumonia, according to his father. And hockey is a physical sport, so that face-off that took him out from Nico Hischier as well. And the Panthers are 2-6-2 this season without Barkov. He's very much needed in this lineup, and just an overall top center in this league. Next New Year's resolution for the Panthers is at ME Hockey Lobster is no. I know already, break them. Happy New Year. and listen. As another alarm goes off, my bad. Should turn off all my alarms prior to recording. Let me turn off another one. But yeah, New Year's resolutions. I know we're talking Florida Panthers here, but New Year's resolutions are somewhat BS. You can choose to make a resolution any day of the year, and you can choose to change, and you could choose to create a new habit even 2 weeks before New Year's Day. And proud of you for recognizing that as far as that. And at GimmeFood _84 says, I vow to stop terrifying my cat when we score. No, you won't. I want you to celebrate when the Panthers score. I celebrate when the Panthers score. Sometimes I scare my cat too, as well. So it's okay. Your cat will forgive you. Cats are very forgiving creatures, I promise you. But as far as my New Year's resolution, I guess if I were to have one, it's just like when it comes to losing streaks, it's just think about what the long-term mission is for the Panthers as well. And that's something I want to compose myself with when it comes to where the Panthers are as far as window. And listen, this was the step back year on paper. And still a little bit's a way to go for this Panthers team to even compete for a playoff spot. And the guys over at Locked On NHL on the Tuesday episode, Mikey DiStefano and David Morisuti asked this question: do they think that Paul Maurice is going to be fired after year one? And my opinion is that if they're out of the playoffs with about 5 to 10 games before the season ends, it could be a consideration. And don't know how much you want to start over after all that, we can acknowledge that Paul Maurice hasn't done the best job, but I'm not on that. I'm still not on that train. I think he's still 2 years minimum for the Panthers, but I think if Paul Maurice wants to make a really good case for himself, that you need to get at least 60% of the points from here on out. You got 2. And you didn't give the opposition 1. So it was a complete 4-point swing for the Panthers. Even though the Montreal Canadiens, I watched their game on Wednesday against the Tampa Bay Lightning, and man, they couldn't protect Jake Allen for anything. And Braden Point had a amazing goal that he skated through 4 defenders to get it past Jake Allen. And it was kind of similar to the McDavid goal last season against Alexander Georgiev and the New York Rangers. So very, very similar to that. So my New Year's resolution is to just be more patient as far as the Panthers going on mini losing streaks. But at the same time, if the Panthers don't go on their fair share of winning streaks prior to those, and you fall behind more, it might be a little bit of a different mindset and approach. But just trying to tell myself to have a little patience myself for this team. And it's tough. It's tough when you have the expectations there. You go from President's Trophy to this. But Thursday night was a good start. Those are the key words. Good start. And it's an opportunity for the Florida Panthers to build. And that's a good way to segue to segment number 3, where we will discuss the Florida Panthers on a back-to-back, as they will be going to Raleigh, North Carolina to face against the Carolina Hurricanes. And we might have a little bit of a World Junior update for the Florida Panthers prospects. We're going to discuss that more in the third segment here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Third and final segment here on this Friday, December 30th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, our last show of 2022, and a great day organizationally for the Cats. Grigory Denisenko has a 3-point night in Charlotte after he had a little bit of a stint here. Very noticeable as well when he was here. Had a few opportunities as he hit the post multiple times and almost had his first career goal in a Florida Panthers sweater, of course, laying out the big body, and then gets 2 goals and 1 assist in Charlotte's 3-2 win over the Cleveland Monsters. And the World Juniors, Ludvig Jansson, defenseman prospect for the Florida Panthers, gets 2 goals for Sweden, including the game win on a beautiful backhand as he was gaining the zone and got right in front of the blue paint as well. Goes forehand, backhand for the game winner in overtime as well, and got the second goal of the game for Team Sweden. So that's the highlight as far as the best player so far for the tournament. Got like we spoke about earlier in the week, he got 3 assists in the first game for Team Sweden as they scored 11 goals, and Ludvig Jansson got 3 assists in that one. But I spoke earlier about being surprised that Segei Bobrovsky was starting over versus the Montreal Canadiens over the Carolina Hurricanes. And Bob finished the month of December with a .920 save percentage in that month. Not bad for a guy who had a really poor start, and we were already hammering Spencer Knight being the number 1. And listen, David Dork called it that it's a very fluid situation for the Panthers. It's just you're gonna have to see if Spencer Knight can consistently put up these numbers. And of course, him dealing with his non-COVID illness held him back a little bit. And this is where Bobrovsky put himself out there and really said, "Hey, I got this contract. I got this $10 million a year contract for a reason." And it hasn't been a performance like this over an 82 game sample size for Bob, but hey, a good month for him, and this is going to be a gauntlet of a schedule for January. So Spencer Knight's likely to start. If we do see Segei Bobrovsky on a back-to-back, I'd be very surprised with the type of schedule that we're seeing next month. But the Panthers going right into Raleigh, North Carolina last time around. And I think the logic as well is Paul Maurice saw how Spencer Knight performed against the Carolina Hurricanes last go-around in early November. If you guys remember, that was the game where there was a threat of a hurricane coming to South Florida. Did not come to the region. The game went on, and through 40 minutes, the Panthers were leading 1-0. The Carolina Hurricanes put up 40 shots on Spencer Knight, and they won a grinded out, low scoring, full 60-minute type of game. Spencer Knight was just on his game. Nick Cousins got the early goal for the Cats, and then Barkov scoring on the power play late to create some separation. One of Florida's 2 shutouts on the season, that one being against Carolina, the other one against the Columbus Blue Jackets, where Bob starts. And that was a game at the time where it looked at the Panthers should have lost that on paper, with still missing Matthew Tkachuk. Patrick Hornquist with the concussion after his first one this season, that Luke Cunnin hit on him that cost him put a 5-minute major on Luke Cunnin. And Aaron Ekblad was still on LTIR. He hadn't returned yet. And the Panthers complete 60 minutes in that one. But man, this Carolina Hurricanes team, defensively sound, third in the league in goals against per game, and they just wear you down. Rob Brindamore, with this being a home matchup, getting the last change, you're going to see the Stahl line more than likely match up against Barkov as well. Even though you have players like an Andrei Svechnikov leading the way in scoring, Sebastian Aho as well, Marty Necas as well, who just, I believe Marty Necas got a new deal. Pyotr Kochetkov as well, as started most of the playoffs last season with Antti Raanta and Freddie Anderson dealing with their fair share of injuries, and he's for the most part taken this job from both of them. He's a 3-1 odds to win the Calder Trophy this year. So he could be, and they had a Calder Trophy candidate 2 years ago with Alex Nedeljkovic, and got rid of him. And just a system that they put around their goalies as well. They protect their goalies as well, and Pyotr Kochetkov doing his part as well in cleaning up shots. 23 years old, signed an extension as well, and the Panthers. If it's a low scoring game, I really do like the Panthers' chances in coming out with a win. We saw it in early November, and we could very well much see it again. Of course, it's going to be a tougher task on the road. You're second end of a back-to-back. The Carolina Hurricanes have won 9 straight, so that doesn't help. So, and 3 shutouts in that span. Kochetkov getting 2 of them, Antti Raanta getting 1 of them, and just the ability to wear teams down. And it's going to be another tough mission. Even the Panthers, after their game against the Canadiens, they were already talking about moving on, because it's kind of like the Panthers know that they're better than Montreal, playing like it and saying, okay, the playoffs start now, like Matthew Tkachuk has said. And I think that's and of course, of course, we wonder what's said before the media comes into the room and asks these players questions about what the mindset is and how they talk to each other too. And just say, I just wonder. And I'm sure Matthew Tkachuk is very vocal in saying, move on from this, guys. We got a game tomorrow, a big one. Let's get our mind right. I wonder if it's spoken similarly to that. And based on their messaging in their post-game media availability, it seems to be that way. And we'll see if the Panthers really build off this. If they can come out with a win against Carolina, and then New Year's Day against the New York Rangers, who it's a very winnable game, and then Arizona coming to town, all winnable games. Then we can look back at December 29th and see, maybe this was the start of the Panthers accelerating closer to a playoff spot. Again, you need to get 60% to 2/3 of your points. really the rest of the way to make a case for the playoffs. And one game at a time. So the Panthers, tonight's game will be on ESPN Plus exclusive. John Buchacross and AJ Melesco and Don Moore will be on the call from PNC Arena in Raleigh, North Carolina. So no Bally Sports Florida broadcast for people in South Florida. So that's your programming note for that. And last show of the year, and hopefully by the time we talk to you on Sunday night / Monday morning, we'll be talking about the Panthers' first 3-game winning streak of the season. But in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast so you'll be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone, and Steel Roden. And for all your World Junior coverage, make sure to listen to Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, make sure to listen to today's episode of Locked On Sports Today. Peter Bukowski brings you the biggest stories from around the sports world in 20 minutes. Get analysis and opinions before anyone else with our local and national experts and insiders. Locked On Sports Today, available on YouTube, Odyssey app, and wherever you get your podcast. So I'm Armando Velez, signing off. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.
Your Locked On Panthers,